Have you ever stared at a test paper and felt your stomach drop? Not because you didn't study, but because something inside you just froze. Your heart races, your mind goes blank, and suddenly all the English you learned disappears like smoke. And the worst part? It's not just about English, it's about feeling like you are the problem, like something inside you is broken, like maybe you're just not smart enough. Not fast enough, not one of them. I used to think the same. I failed every exam, over and over, and every failure felt like another piece of proof that I wasn't made for this language. Until one day, I changed one thing, just one. Not my books, not my schedule, not even my grammar. I changed the way I saw myself. This is not a video about English rules. This is a story about fear, identity, and the quiet decision that changed everything. If you've ever felt stuck, ashamed, or afraid to speak, stay with me, because this story might just be your mirror. He always looked at the red marks on his test paper like they were tattoos of shame. Every failure felt like proof that he wasn't smart enough, not fast enough, not good enough. But the truth was hidden deeper. He wasn't failing because of the English questions. He was failing because he had given up on himself long before the exam began. Fear had become louder than his logic, and silence had replaced every answer. He whispered one sentence in English that day, staring at the paper. "I don't belong here." But here's the truth no one ever taught him in school. Exams don't measure your English. They measure your nervous system. They measure your ability to stay calm when your brain wants to run. You can know 100 answers, but if anxiety blocks the door, they stay trapped inside. That realization hit hard, like a gentle but painful slap of reality. So he stopped, took 3 deep breaths before the next study session, and whispered again in English, "I'm safe now." The deeper wound wasn't the test, it was identity. With every failure, he unknowingly added another label to himself. "I'm bad at English. I'm slow. I'm not one of them." Labels that stuck like glue. But one afternoon, sitting alone in his room, he looked into the mirror and said something different. "I'm not bad at English, I'm just rebuilding." That sentence changed something inside. Not everything at once, but enough to make his voice a little stronger. He remembered a specific moment. A test where he got the lowest score in class. But strangely, it wasn't the grade that hurt the most. It was the denial, the fake smile, the "I don't care" attitude, the pretending that it didn't matter. That was the real failure. Not the F on the paper, but the refusal to be honest with himself. And that day, something ruptured. He looked at the paper again and said, "I've been lying to myself." The shift started slowly. Not with better scores, but with better questions. Instead of asking, "Why am I so bad at English?" he asked, "What am I afraid of when I open my mouth?" And the answer wasn't grammar. It was fear of looking stupid, fear of judgment, fear of feeling exposed. That fear had shaped his entire relationship with English, and only by naming it could he start changing it. Awareness became his first form of healing. He took out a journal and started rewriting his inner dialogue. Every time the thought, "I'm bad at English," showed up, he replaced it with, "I'm practicing something brave." He even made sticky notes in English. Progress, not perfection. Every mistake is a step forward. And little by little, those notes weren't just paper on the wall. They were rewiring his story. Because your identity is not fixed. It's practiced, just like your speaking. From that day on, before studying, he created a new ritual. Pause. One hand on the heart, 3 slow breaths, and one sentence in English that reminded him of who he was becoming. "I am learning. I am growing. I am showing up." It wasn't magic, but it changed everything, because the fear didn't disappear. It just got quieter. And in that silence, English had space to enter. He looked back on his old test papers not with hate, but with understanding. They weren't symbols of failure anymore. They were snapshots of a version of himself that didn't know better. Now he had a mission, not to chase perfect scores, but to reclaim his voice. And as he started building that new identity, something unexpected happened. His brain became clearer, his English flowed more naturally. But what if the biggest reason we stay stuck isn't about how we study English? If you want to keep failing, just keep doing what I used to do. Study for hours without truly understanding. Memorize definitions without ever saying them aloud. Read grammar books like they're magic spells, hoping fluency will appear one day. But it never does, because memorization without emotion is like planting seeds in concrete. Nothing grows. If you really want to fail, don't speak. Just keep stuffing your brain with silent information. If you want to stay insecure forever, treat English like a school subject, not a life skill. That's what I did. I thought English was only about tests, not about connection, not about communication. I studied hard, but I never spoke. And when it was time to speak, I froze. My voice shook. My mouth betrayed me. If you want that same feeling, keep learning for grades, not for conversations. Keep your English locked in notebooks, not in your voice. If you want to stay stuck, then push harder when your brain is already overwhelmed. That was my strategy. I forced myself to keep going, even when I was tired, distracted, or emotionally exhausted. I called it discipline, but it was actually damage. I was burning my mind out without creating fluency. Real growth doesn't come from pressure. It comes from rhythm. Try this instead. Take a 2-minute reset when your brain feels full. Walk, breathe, then return. If you want to hate English forever, obsess over correctness. That was my obsession. I couldn't say one sentence without asking myself, is this right? I never felt proud of what I said, only afraid of saying something wrong. And guess what? That fear kept my English locked in a cage. If you want freedom, speak one imperfect sentence every day. Say it with pride. Let your mistakes breathe. Because fluency is not about being perfect. It's about being brave. If you want to keep English as a painful experience, ignore your emotions. I used to do that. I thought emotions didn't belong in language learning, but now I know, without emotion, memory doesn't stick. Without joy, your brain doesn't care. If you want transformation, study English in moments that matter, after a powerful video, during a conversation that touches you, while journaling after a bad day. Learning is deeper when it's emotional. If you want slow progress, stay passive. Just watch, read, and listen, but don't speak, don't respond, don't try. That was me for years, a silent consumer of English. But fluency doesn't come from watching. It comes from participating, from showing up, from using your voice, even when it sounds awkward. Speak daily, even if it's to your reflection, even if it's just, I'm doing my best. If you want to feel lost, never personalize your learning. I made that mistake too. I used random sentences, generic examples, boring topics. But your brain doesn't remember what feels irrelevant. Your brain remembers you, your job, your story, your pain. So stop saying, the cat is on the table. Start saying, I'm tired of being silent in meetings. That's real English. That's emotional English. That's the language your future needs. And if you really want to make sure you never change, keep treating English as something separate from your life. Keep it in your books, your apps, your lessons. Never invite it into your identity. That's what I did, until everything collapsed. But something changed when I stopped studying English and started living in it. And that is where the real story begins. He walked out of the exam room with shaking hands and an empty heart. Not because he didn't know the answers, he did. But every time he sat in that chair, something invisible would wrap around his chest. His mind would go blank. His hands would sweat. He would read the questions and forget everything he studied the night before. He didn't fail because he lacked knowledge. He failed because panic stole his access to it. A week later, something happened. His English teacher, a quiet woman with tired eyes but a sharp heart, called him after class. She looked at him, not like a student but like a person. And she said something so simple, it sounded almost wrong. Stop studying English, start using it. He blinked, confused. What do you mean? But she didn't explain. She just handed him a list of 3 words and said, "Go use them today. Don't memorize. Live them." No. That same evening, he tried it. He sat on the bus and looked at the city lights, repeating the 3 words under his breath. Not like a student, but like someone discovering fire for the first time. He used one of them when texting a friend, another while describing his day out loud to himself. It was awkward, but it was real. Something inside him shifted. He wasn't reciting anymore. He was using, and it made English feel alive. By the end of that week, he had started a tiny ritual. Every day before school, he chose 3 words from his textbook, but he didn't highlight them or write definitions. He turned them into sentences, spoke them while brushing his teeth, whispered them while walking. His favorite sentence became, "I don't need perfect words, I need real ones." And strangely, he started to remember more, not because he tried harder, but because he connected deeper. Soon, something strange happened. His test scores began to rise, not dramatically, not overnight, but they moved like a slow elevator finally coming back to life. The difference wasn't in the test itself. The difference was in him. He was no longer trying to pass. He was trying to express. The grammar questions felt less like traps and more like opportunities. And when he made mistakes, he didn't freeze. He just continued. The change didn't go unnoticed. One day, his teacher returned his test with a small smile. She pointed to one sentence in his writing. "I used to be afraid of English. Now I use English to talk to my fear." She looked at him and said, "You've become your own teacher now." He didn't know what to say, but his heart understood something. This wasn't just about exams anymore. It was about freedom. He began recording one 10-second voice note every night, not to impress anyone, just to hear himself grow. "Today I made a mistake and kept speaking. I talked to a stranger in English. I didn't understand everything, but I tried." Each voice note was a little victory, and over time, those 10 seconds became a habit, a ritual of proof that he was becoming someone new. The exams didn't get easier, but he became braver, and that made all the difference. Because now, when he sat in that cold exam room, he no longer tried to survive the test. He showed up as someone who used English, lived English, and trusted his mind. But if one sentence could start all of this, what could one belief do? There's a strange thing that happens during exams. You know the answer. You've seen it before, maybe even practiced it the night before. But when you look at the question, something tightens inside you. Your mind goes quiet, not peaceful quiet, but the kind that feels like panic dressed as silence. And that's when it hits you. It's not about what your brain knows. It's about what your identity believes. And deep down, your identity still whispers, "You're not good enough." This is called an identity-knowledge mismatch. Your brain might be prepared, but your self-image hasn't caught up. It still thinks you're the struggling student, the one who always gets things wrong. And in that gap, between what you know and who you think you are, confidence dies. That's why you freeze even when you have the answer. The first step to changing this, say it out loud right now. My knowledge is bigger than my fear. Say it again until it starts to feel true. Then there's cortisol, the silent killer of clarity. When you're stressed, your body releases it. It's a survival hormone, useful when you're running from a wild animal, not so useful when you're trying to remember verb tenses. Cortisol shuts down the part of your brain responsible for retrieving knowledge. So the more afraid you are, the less intelligent you feel. But it's not you, it's your chemistry. The solution? Before every study session or test, breathe for 30 seconds. Seriously, slow down. That breath is your access key to stored knowledge. Now let's talk about the echo of old failures. Every bad grade, every awkward silence in class, every moment of not knowing, they echo in your nervous system. You don't just remember the grade, you remember the feeling. And before the next test even begins, your brain prepares for pain. That's why you feel afraid, even when the material is familiar. To break this loop, reframe the fear. A bad grade is data, not destiny. Say it until it becomes a shield. There's a name for this pattern. Anticipatory anxiety. It's the fear that something will go wrong before it even starts. And it's tricky because it hides behind logic. You say things like, I just want to be prepared. But what you really mean is, I don't want to feel humiliated again. The problem isn't your preparation, it's your memory of pain. Healing comes when you practice failing safely. Speak for 2 minutes a day without pressure. Make tiny mistakes. Laugh at them. You're building tolerance. As fear decreases, something incredible happens. Your true competence reveals itself, not because you suddenly became smarter, but because the walls finally come down. The mind you were fighting against becomes your ally. You start to see your progress in small ways, a sentence spoken without hesitation, a phrase remembered at the right moment. That's your real English. It was always there. It was just buried under fear. You are not your last test score. You are not the silence from last year's classroom. You are a person whose identity is in transition. And in psychology, transition is messy, but powerful. The more you show up with curiosity instead of fear, the more your nervous system rewires itself. Speak 1 sentence a day with courage, not because it's perfect, but because it's practice. I don't need to impress. I need to express. You can test yourself daily, but without pressure. 2 minutes. Set a timer. Talk about your day. Say something real. No grammar checking, no self-judgment. Just you, your voice, and the truth that your knowledge has always been waiting to come out. And if your brain knows the answer, but your identity doesn't believe it yet, maybe it's time to change who you think you are. Did you enjoy the content and it made a difference for you? Click on Super Thanks and support our work. He used to sit for hours trying to study English, watching videos with subtitles, memorizing grammar rules, highlighting textbooks, and yet nothing truly stuck. The language felt like a stranger in his mouth, cold, distant, empty. Until one night, he asked himself a question that pierced deeper than any motivational video ever had. Who am I becoming every time I study like this? And suddenly, the goal wasn't fluency anymore. It was identity. He stopped asking, how do I pass? And started asking, who do I want to be in English? That small shift changed everything. Because language isn't just about words, it's about becoming. So he began visualizing his future self. The one who walks into a job interview with calm eyes. The one who speaks in meetings without shrinking. The one who orders coffee in another country without apologizing for his accent. 2 simple English sentences helped him stay connected to that version. I speak with clarity, I am confident in any room. Then came the liberation. He gave up the fantasy of being ready one day. Instead, he started speaking, not fluently, not perfectly, just speaking. He would talk to himself while walking, describe his day out loud, repeat scenes from movies in the mirror. The more he moved his mouth, the more the language moved into his life. He stopped rereading notes. He started using them. That was real English, not the kind you study, the kind you live. He also stopped pretending that language learning had to be cold and academic. He allowed English to touch his emotions. If he was sad, he wrote it in English. If he was angry, he whispered it out. If he felt joy, he tried to describe it. Even with simple words, I feel free, I feel strong, I'm learning even now. That's when the language started sticking. Because now, it wasn't just in his head, it was in his heart. One night, he sat watching a YouTube video. It was about discipline, and for the first time he didn't need subtitles. He understood, not every word, but the message, and it hit him like a wave. English feels alive. It wasn't a subject anymore. It was part of his nervous system. It was his second voice. And that's when he knew he had stopped being a learner. He had become a user. He built a new routine around that identity. Every day he watched 3 minutes of English content he enjoyed, not because it was educational, but because it felt real. TED Talks, emotional scenes from movies, interviews, podcasts. Then he spoke about them. What did I feel? What did I learn? Not academic answers, just honest ones. It made the language feel human. He wasn't just learning English, he was learning himself through English. He also made one decision that most learners never make. He stopped translating. Even when he didn't know the perfect word, he tried to explain the idea. He used what he had, because fluency isn't knowing every word. It's knowing how to express your truth with the words you do have. I'm not a dictionary, he laughed to himself. I'm a speaker. And that mindset gave him peace. That was the real breakthrough, when he stopped treating English like a thing he had to master and started treating it like a place he belonged. He no longer asked, "How long will it take?" He asked, "How can I bring English into this moment?" And the more he lived in English, the more English began living in him. But it wasn't magic, it was science, and something even more powerful than motivation. The brain is a strange place. You fill it with knowledge, but nothing sticks until something shifts. And when it does, fluency feels almost magical. But it's not magic, it's neuroscience. He didn't know that in the beginning. He thought he was just bad at English. But 30 days of a new method changed everything. Why? Because he stopped feeding his brain with information and started activating it like a living system. There's something called the activation principle. When you simply understand something, your brain lights up for a moment. But when you speak it, when your mouth moves, when your body participates, a different part of your brain turns on. The circuits of fluency, the ones that make words come faster, smoother, easier. That's why for 30 days, he chose one sentence and repeated it 20 times aloud. This is my voice. I am growing. Simple, but powerful. He also discovered the retrieval rehearsal effect. The brain remembers what it recalls, not what it reviews. Most learners reread, rewatch, re-listen, but real memory is built when you try to remember without help. That's why, before opening his notes, he tested himself. What did I learn yesterday? Can I say it without looking? This small habit rewired his memory from passive to permanent. Then came the emotional encoding breakthrough. Science shows that emotion boosts retention. That's why we remember childhood songs, but forget what we studied last week. So he stopped learning in neutral mode. He created emotion. If a sentence made him feel strong, he shouted it. If it reminded him of his struggles, he said it softly, like a prayer. The more his heart entered the process, the more the language stayed. Each day, the impact compounded, not by doing more, but by doing smarter. 5 minutes of real activation beat 5 hours of passive study. He didn't chase vocabulary lists anymore. He chased connections. One word spoken, one phrase repeated, one voice note recorded. 30 days of this, and his brain no longer needed permission to speak. It just did. He also kept a 30-day speaking streak. No breaks, no excuses. Some days he felt tired, some days uninspired, but every day he spoke, even for 60 seconds. That consistency told his brain, this matters. And when the brain believes something matters, it builds stronger neural paths. His voice got faster, his hesitation got weaker, his confidence grew louder. He wasn't just learning English anymore. He was becoming fluent in self-trust. What most people don't understand is that fluency isn't a sudden jump. It's a daily drip, a rhythm, a repetition, like water carving through stone, not with force, but with patience. You don't feel the change at first. But one day someone says, "Wow, your English sounds different," and you smile, because you didn't wait for fluency to find you. You built it, one deliberate day at a time. And now he knew something most learners didn't. The brain doesn't care how much you know. It cares how often you use it. And when you speak daily, even for 1 minute, your brain gets the message, this is who I am now. But the real question wasn't just how it changed in 30 days. The real question was, what happened to his world after he did? It's strange how people respond to energy before they respond to words. At first, no one noticed when he studied more. No one clapped when he stayed up late repeating phrases. But the day he started speaking with even a little more confidence, everything shifted. The room listened differently. Teachers paused. Classmates leaned in. That's what we call the confidence signal. When you speak like someone who belongs, the world believes you do, even if you're not fluent yet. It wasn't just about vocabulary. It was how he spoke, slower, clearer, with presence. He practiced standing tall, breathing before answering, and letting silence exist between his words. No rushing, no apologizing, just owning the space. 1 minute a day, he practiced this alone. I am learning. I speak with presence. And soon, that 1 minute of training changed how the world saw him. Not as the silent one, but as someone becoming fluent. The more he participated, the more people included him. That's the participation effect. In meetings, he said one sentence. In class, he raised his hand once. In conversations, he didn't wait to be perfect. He joined. And that one small action created an invisible shift. Teachers remembered him. Co-workers respected him more. He wasn't just learning English. He was changing his reputation. It's the feedback loop of growth. Each small success rewired how he saw himself. He celebrated them. Today, I asked a question in English. Today, I didn't freeze when I made a mistake. These were micro wins, but they were everything. Because most people wait to celebrate only the big things. He learned to honor the process. And in doing that, he built momentum that no app, no textbook, no teacher could give him. He stopped chasing external approval. Instead, he acted like the version of himself that had already succeeded. He walked like him, spoke like him, chose habits like him. Act like the future me, he told himself. That's not pretending, that's identity training. And the more he acted from that space, the faster he grew into it. The version of him who once whispered in class, now spoke like he belonged in any room. He also noticed something powerful. People stopped calling him the one who struggles with English. Now, they said, he's really improving. Or even better, he's always trying. And that changed everything. Because when people see you as someone who tries, they support you differently. You become a person of movement, not fear. You earn respect not with perfection, but with effort. One day, someone asked him, "How did you become so confident?" And he laughed, because he didn't feel confident, but he had trained himself to speak anyway. That was the secret. He wasn't fluent because he waited to feel ready. He was fluent because he moved while feeling unsure. And that's the invisible line that separates those who grow from those who stay waiting. What no one tells you is this: the world doesn't respond to who you were. It responds to who you practice being. And every day you show up as a slightly more courageous version of yourself, the world shows up differently for you. But there's one more truth he had to learn, and it had nothing to do with fluency and everything to do with fear. He sat with a notebook on his lap, staring at the page. Why did I fail so much? He asked himself quietly. And the answer came from a place deeper than memory, from his nervous system, from all those frozen moments in class. Because fear was louder than learning. Not because he lacked knowledge, not because he didn't try, but because fear had always arrived first. Whispering lies, making his voice shake, so he whispered something different. I'm safe to try. What changed everything? He asked next. He didn't remember the exact day, but he remembered the moment he spoke before he was ready, the moment his voice cracked but he didn't stop. The sentence was imperfect, but it was real. That was the beginning. One decision, he wrote, speak before I feel ready. That became his rule, and the more he followed it, the more freedom he found. Who am I becoming? He wrote on the next line. And the answer surprised him. Not just a fluent speaker, not just someone who passed exams, but someone who used courage as a method, someone who chose to show up while scared, who saw mistakes as signs of movement, who didn't wait for perfection to take action. I'm not the best in the room, he wrote, but I'm always the one who tries. That became his new identity. So he started recording voice notes, not just practice, declarations. I will succeed. I will speak. I am enough even when I stumble. Some days his voice shook. Some days it felt strong. But he recorded them anyway, because these weren't for the world. They were for the version of him that used to stay silent. And little by little, that voice grew roots. Then came the real test, not an exam, but a moment in real life. A conversation with someone he admired. The old him would have avoided it. But now he walked toward it. His English wasn't perfect, but he listened, he responded, he connected, and afterward he smiled, not because it went well, but because he had stayed present. Fear came, but didn't win. He started ending his days with a new ritual, one sentence in English that scared him, just one. I'm capable of more than I believe. I deserve to be heard. One day, I'll teach others how I got here. Saying these sentences wasn't easy, but that's why he did it. Because fluency wasn't the goal anymore. Freedom was. And freedom lives just beyond fear. He realized something powerful. Failure wasn't the enemy. The real enemy was avoidance. Fear had told him not to try because trying might hurt. But now, he knew, the pain of avoiding was worse than the pain of failing. Because every failure had taught him something, grown him, shaped him. Failure didn't stop him, it sculpted him. And that was the final shift. He didn't stop failing, he stopped fearing failure. That's what made him fluent. That's what made him unstoppable. And maybe, just maybe, the same shift is waiting for you. One sentence, one decision, one brave moment at a time. You've just heard a story, but maybe it felt like yours. Because the truth is, English isn't just a language we study, it's a mirror, a challenge, a doorway, and the way we face it often reflects how we face life itself. So let me ask you, what are you really afraid of when you speak English? Is it the grammar, or is it the fear of being seen, of not being perfect, of feeling small? And what would change if you stopped waiting to feel confident and started acting like someone who already belongs? Because fluency isn't a reward for the perfect student. It's a gift for the brave one, the one who shows up, speaks up, and keeps trying, even when the voice shakes. So tonight, before you sleep, say one sentence in English that scares you, even just one. Not because it's perfect, but because it's real. And real is where transformation begins. If this story touched you or made you reflect, subscribe to the channel. Like this video, leave a comment sharing your story, and turn on notifications, because this is just one of many stories that can help you grow, not just in English, but in life.